Welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. Today I have 3 9.8 comics to avoid buying now, and I also got 3 that I think you could buy now. So first one, it's a Predator #1 in a 9.8 from 1989. I really like this one. I've recommended it a lot over the last year or two, but I noticed there's some new comic books coming out, like new Predator comic books. I think the Predator #1, it ships like August 3rd or something like that, early August. So it's going to be tough, I think, to get a deal in the next few months leading into this new comic book being released on a Predator #1 from 1989. It is a great one though, so this is maybe more of a less of an avoid and more of a just be patient. Yeah, because I think maybe you wait until, let's say, around Christmas, maybe even into early next year. The Predator one cools down a little bit and you can get a better deal then. It is one I really like, so it's kind of hard to include it on this outright sort of avoid video. But there's 377 9.8s in a blue label and 19.1% the 9.8 ratio. It's a Dark Horse comic book, so I think it's definitely going to be a little bit less printed than like a Marvel or a DC comic of this period, so it's a cool one in the super high grade. I saw one sell recently for $700. So this one's just hanging in there. I feel like, maybe the anticipation when that new comic book comes out in August, maybe this one will get up to kind of 800, and I would think at that time you wouldn't want to be a buyer. But maybe if on the other side of this, you wait till around Christmas, maybe after Christmas, this one cools down to kind of 600 or so, maybe even 575 with how the market is really kind of cooling down. That could be how a Predator #1 plays out. Yeah, I would just be a little bit patient while this new comic book comes out, and hopefully you'll save a little bit of money on a Predator #1 in a 9.8. But if you've watched the channel over the last year or two, I've recommended this probably like 10 or 20 times as, yeah, just a great one. And I'm a fan of the original Predator movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I've always wanted this one too. Yeah, it's just one that's kind of eluded me. I don't have this one in a 9.8 or a raw copy in my collection. Okay, moving on though. Next one is a new Avengers #7 in a 9.8. This one has really plummeted in value. The Illuminati in that Doctor Strange movie, they get killed off basically. So for that reason, I think there has been kind of another downward level into for this book. Another drop in price. And I think the Illuminati, like the purpose of that Illuminati, I think was just to introduce like Reed Richards basically and Professor X, and yeah, in that sort of multiverse they were shanked, but that just introduces those characters, and I think eventually there's going to be like MCU Fantastic Four and MCU X-Men. But this book, so it's interesting right now, they're selling for like right around $150 maybe. It's just absolutely cooled down so much. I think they're kind of maybe 160 to 170. There's an auction with like 5 days left on eBay right now, and I think it's at 142.50. So still 5 days left in that. So you'd think that one would probably is going to get to kind of 160. But then there's like I believe it's a 179.99 or best offer, and there's a bunch of those on eBay right now for this one because I think everyone kind of got it graded. So you know what, for this one, even though it seems like it's kind of cheap right now, I think this one will just continually cool off as the more time goes on, from this Doctor Strange movie. Yeah, they're like, what, 150, 160 right now. They were like $700, I think, for a week or two there, like $600 to $700, a few of them sold for. I still see this one cooling down to like $125, so I don't even think right now you'd want to get in there around 150 to 175, let's call it. Still an avoid on a new Avengers #7. 588 9.8s in the blue label, 50.7% the 9.8 ratio, and just a great example of like we never recommend to kind of like I just heard this character is going to be in a movie, now I got to go buy all the comics. Like, that's not going to work out usually. It usually never does, and this is a great example of that. Certainly if you got excited about Illuminati and you paid $500 or $600 for this, pretty much 2 months later they're $150. Not a situation you'd want to be in. So I'd still avoid a new Avengers 7 in a 9.8. All right, moving on. Last one to avoid, a Batman 386 in a 9.8 First appearance of the Black Mask. This one, you know, being a big Batman fan myself, I just never really could like this one a lot. A very underwhelming cover, I would say. I don't like the cover at all. Black Mask, a pretty cool villain. Like, there's just this, I think this cover just leaves a lot on the table for this one, and then because it's not a cover that I think collectors want, it's never really taken off in value either. So pretty much, unfortunately, I think it's an outright avoid. Like, if this had just a classic Black Mask action, lots of colors cover, it would be a great one, I think, because it's decent in the 9.8. Yeah, there's 340 9.8s in a blue label. A 1 to 340 is pretty great. 24%, the 9.8 ratio. So recent prices I saw $330 and $352, which kind of, you know, it seems like a good value. But, you know, I thought of an example of a book that was like about $300. Like, so an Uncanny X-Men 266 in a 9.8, like 2018, 2019, when I was kind of really getting into the 9.8s, you could have bought that Uncanny X-Men 266 9.8 for kind of $300, maybe up to $350 in that range. And a Batman 386 at that time was, you know, $300, maybe a little bit over, maybe a little bit under. They were pretty much about the same price. Maybe Uncanny X-Men was 266 was a bit more. But now we're in 2022. Just saw an Uncanny 266 9.8 sell for $890 on Comic Link. And these Batman 386s are still going for like $330 or $352. So just a good contrast. Like Uncanny X-Men 266 9.8 to me is like a no-brainer 9.8 comic to invest in. And Batman 386 doesn't have the good cover. Yeah, leaves a lot on the table, I think. It could be a lot better, and it's just not one that collectors have really went after. So I personally would avoid. And, you know, me being a huge Batman fan, I pretty much got all the keys during this 80s period, but I've avoided a Batman 386 as well. Just, yeah, don't really love the cover for sure. But, okay. 3 to avoid, and 3 quick buys here. I really like, it's a Web of Spider-Man, number 118 in a 9.8. This is like a great 9.8. On top of that, it's first appearance of the Scarlet Spider. First Scarlet Spider solo story as well. Great cover as well. Classic, like a 90s cover, for sure. In a 9.8 though, super high grade. There's not a lot of these out there, and it's got a really tough ratio for a 1990s book. Yeah, this is just a great collector item in the 9.8, and then it's a bit of like an up-and-coming, under-the-radar Spider-Man key issue. But this is one of those books. In this really tough market, this is one that's actually like rising in value, basically. You know, I hadn't saw a few of these sell. There's not too many in the 9.8 on the census. I hadn't saw many sell often recently. They were sort of in the 575 to 600 range like 3 to 4 months ago, but I'm pretty sure I saw one sell up to 800. I think people are paying in the kind of 700 to 800 range on this one now, and I think on eBay there might be 1 or 2, but it's like 1,200 or something like that. So there's people out there trying to get more on this one, but it is a great one. You know, if you really did like this one, I do like this one. I'm kind of waiting, maybe hopefully an auction pops up in Canada and I can get it, you know, maybe around that 600 US dollar price would be great. If you know, hopefully the market's cooling down, you get this one a little closer to 700, but I think people are paying in that 700 to 800 because, yeah, it kind of stands out as a pretty tough 9.8 for a 1990s one in a super high grade, and that big first appearance of Scarlet Spider, and there's some potential there probably with these Across the Spider-Verse movies, like all these different Spider-Mans coming out of the woodwork in these movies. So yeah, I really like a Web of Spider-Man, number 180. That's one that I kind of want to buy myself. Yeah, I'm on the lookout for an auction to pop up and hopefully get it for a fair price. Okay, next one I think you could buy, a Batman 428. Just a classic Batman key issue from the 80s, and we're on the other side of that Batman movie, so I think, you know, just sort of your typical Batman key issue is cooling off just a little bit. I think you can get a pretty good deal if you waited on an auction for this one, for the, you know, this one to pop up in a 9.8. And classic key, I think, when they killed off Jason Todd, the death of Jason Todd, and it was there was like a poll done back in the 80s. I believe it was by phone too, which is kind of funny nowadays. There's just like all these polls all over the internet. But yeah, fans voted to kill Jason Todd. So This is a really tough one in the super high grade too. Kind of got that black cover, going to show all the spine ticks and imperfections. So it's a tough one in super high grade. I believe they're maybe 500 to 600. There's the newsstand editions you see occasionally. I think they're kind of pushing kind of 800 to 900. You know what? I actually didn't look at pricing research for that one this morning. I kind of forgot. But so I think they're about maybe 500 to 600. But a Batman 428, a classic Batman key from the 80s, I certainly wanted, and I think you can buy them and get them for a fair price on the, kind of the back end of the Batman movie, rather than buying these Batman keys leading into the movie or when the movie was in theater. Going to be, you know, harder to get good prices during that time. Okay, last one I think you could buy. It's kind of a 2-for-1. It's Ultimate Comics Spider-Man #1. Just a no-brainer. Origin of Miles Morales, big Miles Morales key issue in a 9.8. Notice like a couple of these kind of popping up for decent prices. I think they had got to over two. They were so high, I guess, during, like everything was during COVID and stuff like that. But I think in the lower thousands, I'm seeing a few kind of pop up on eBay. They've been tempting for me, and I think that's a pretty great Miles Morales collector item at that price. And I've said before, like Ultimate Fallout 4, it's a pretty quick appearance for Miles. It is the first appearance, but he fights this kind of weird kangaroo-looking guy, and that's pretty much it. He's, you know, it's a pretty quick appearance. Whereas Ultimate Comics Spider-Man, you get the whole origin, and you know, with his uncle and the Prowler, and yeah, everything, which is awesome. So that's a bit of a no-brainer, I think, if you're a Miles fan. And I think this Ultimate Fallout 4 and the Pichelli second printing in a 9.8, I have a feeling this might be one of those stealthy Miles keys to target. There's the out of all the Ultimate Fallout 4s, there's less. This is the one with the least 9.8s, I guess would be the way to say it. So it's got that going for it. This was straight up, I'm pretty sure it was a free comic book. Like if I believe like stores just were getting them like for free or something like that. But it ends up, I believe that, yeah, there's just not too many in the super high grade. And I think it's a little bit more, a little bit less expensive than the Bagley second printing. Yeah, this Ultimate Fallout 4 Pichelli second printing, you can get it in the 400s right now. Yeah, I think it's kind of, like it might be in the 450 range, kind of doable. And I think that's pretty much worth it. I've been a little bit tempted on this one, and I'm not the biggest fan of like a Pichelli Miles Morales, but you know, this one's not really about the eye appeal. I think it's just about kind of getting that Ultimate Fallout 4 that has the least 9.8s on the census, and I think this one over time might take people by surprise. And it already has, where in 2018, 2019, this one was like $100 in a 9.8. It was like, yeah, like nobody wanted this version of the Ultimate Fallout 4. Now it's 400, 450, so it's been a great one to invest in over time. And I have a feeling it'll kind of continue to kind of prove the doubters wrong, with it being kind of a limited version of Ultimate Fallout 4 in a 9.8. So I think you could buy that one as well. All right, a couple to avoid, a couple to buy. Thanks so much for watching. As always, I'll see you on the next one. If you're liking my content, please subscribe and hit that bell, and I'll keep you updated on future videos.